Welcome back to our final episode in our series, Key Concepts of ACT. In today's video, we're looking at the key outcome of ACT called psychological flexibility. This is an ACT-specific term that means to accept life as it is and take value-based committed action. The inverse is psychological inflexibility, where we respond to life rigidly and take actions based on experiential avoidance. Early in my marriage, we had a 17-year-old student stay in our home who was part of the Marquette junior hockey team. Before he came to live with us, I didn't know much about hockey, but seeing his games and the dedication he had to the sport gave me a new appreciation for what goes into playing hockey. One of the things that drew my eye was the goalie, who is tasked with defending the goal. Although they have huge padding, they have to stop pucks flying at them at high speeds, bouncing off their chest, their arms, their legs, or maybe getting into their glove where it should be. They also have to get into uncomfortable positions, like doing the splits to stop one going from between their legs, or on their knees and move their glove above their heads. All this on a slippery surface of ice. Now, in the last video on committed action, I used the ACT matrix to show how we move toward or away from the life that we value. Today, I'd like to begin with the story of a hockey player named Greg to teach us what psychological flexibility looks like. Once upon a time in a small town, there lived a teenager named Greg who had a remarkable talent. He was an incredible hockey goalie. Greg's reflexes were lightning fast, and he could perform astonishing physical feats, like doing the splits to block even the fastest shots. Everyone admired Greg for his remarkable skills, and he was the star of the local hockey team. One chilly evening, as Greg prepared for a crucial game, he realized that being a great goalie wasn't his only goal in life. He cherished his family deeply, and he wanted to create a more meaningful life for them. However, he also felt an enormous amount of pressure, the pressure to be perfect on the ice, to never let a goal slip by him. The game began, and Greg was in his element. Pucks flew at him from all directions, and he performed his incredible splits to block shot after shot. The crowd cheered his name, and he felt invincible. But as the game went on, he noticed something different. Thoughts started to creep into his mind, distracting him. What if I mess up? What if I let my team down? Greg had always been able to rely on his physical flexibility, but now he needed something more: psychological flexibility. He needed to learn to manage his thoughts and emotions, not just his body. During a crucial moment in the game, as the opposing team prepared for a powerful shot, Greg remembered a lesson he had recently learned. He thought of his family, the ones he had played for, and his core values: excellence, teamwork, and toughness. He took a deep breath and refocused. The puck came hurtling toward him, but this time, something was different. Greg felt a new sense of freedom. He didn't have to block out his thoughts. He just had to acknowledge them and let them pass. He had developed psychological flexibility. In that moment, Greg realized that the key to being a great goalie and leading a more meaningful life was not just about making incredible saves. It was about accepting that he couldn't stop every puck, but he could always choose to defend what truly mattered: his value. The game ended, and Greg's team won. He made some incredible saves, but there were goals that had gone past him. Instead of dwelling on his misses, he focused on what he had gained: a newfound understanding of the importance of psychological flexibility. Off the ice, Greg applied these lessons to his life. He learned to embrace the ups and downs, to be present with his family, and to make choices aligned with his values. As a result, he created a richer and more meaningful life for himself and those he loved. In the end, Greg discovered that the most important saves in his life weren't made on the ice, but in the way he chose to live each day, with both physical and psychological flexibility, defending what truly mattered and doing his best, being there for his team and showing toughness. And so Greg, the goalie, with a heart of gold, continued to inspire others, not only with his incredible saves, but also with the wisdom he had gained about living a truly meaningful life. Hockey goalies are incredibly flexible. Physical flexibility enabled Greg to excel, but the content that showed up between his ears hindered his development as a player, but more importantly as a person. Greg came to a place in his development where he accepted that he couldn't stop every goal, couldn't always be perfect, and the possibility of failure comes every time he steps onto the ice. This acceptance was the start of his journey, but it didn't stop there. He began to excel once he examined his values: excellence, teamwork, and toughness. This acceptance and value work led to the outcome of psychological flexibility for Greg. He could freely move toward his values without getting stuck in the content of his thoughts and feelings. The Hexaflex is a diagram used by ACT therapists to display the 6 core processes of ACT, as well as the outcome of ACT, which is psychological flexibility. Now, I've waited until now to show you this diagram because of the complexity of ACT and the prerequisite of understanding the processes. Now that you have a basic knowledge of the key concepts of ACT, let's use this diagram to better understand how these processes work together to produce psychological flexibility. There's essentially 3 areas of the Hexaflex that therapists tend to work with clients through, depending on the presenting problem. These are open, aware, action. Open includes 2 processes, acceptance and cognitive diffusion, and refers to how we approach our experiences. Aware includes 2 processes, contacting the present moment and self as context, and refers to the perspective that we take in relation to our experience. Action includes 2 processes, values and committed action, and refers to what we choose to do in response to our experience. I mentioned earlier that where a therapist chooses to start depends on the presenting problem of the client. Instead of a step-by-step sequence, ACT works within the context of a client's situation. For example, for clients with various forms of PTSD symptoms, a therapist may choose to start with aware areas of the Hexaflex to help the person to stay present and develop self as context, because of the tendency to feel stuck in a traumatic experience or to experience memories as if they're reoccurring in the present. For clients with depression and anxiety symptoms, typically there is an area of life that is not working or they're impaired in some way as to seek help from a therapist. So a therapist may choose to start with the open area of the Hexaflex to focus on acceptance of negative emotional experiences and to help them get unstuck from their anxious or depressive thoughts with cognitive diffusion. For clients with substance use disorder, a therapist may start with action area of the Hexaflex to focus more on the function of substance use behavior and highlight the values of that person, and to motivate them toward taking committed action. The Hexaflex shows all 6 processes, divides them into 3 areas of clinical focus, with the result being that the person demonstrates increased psychological flexibility. One of my favorite movies as a teenager was The Matrix. The hero of the story is a man named Neo, who discovers how this vast matrix of alien machinery controls the lives of humanity by creating a simulation that humans believe is reality, but in actuality it's a computer system full of zeros and ones. Neo discovers that he can see everything as it is, zeros and ones, and this allows him to bend reality in space and time and do incredible things to save humanity. Now, one of my favorite scenes was when Neo steps into the hallway of this apartment building, and his sight goes from seeing things in the simulation to seeing things as they really are. The walls become zeros and ones, and the agents that are there, that are after him, realize that he can see things as they really are. Now, while this is a movie, the metaphor of the Matrix is a great picture of what happens once we understand what's really going on in the mind. The thoughts we have are not how things really are, but are merely thoughts that create a very compelling simulation of our experience. In many ways, many of the thoughts that we have been programmed by our environment based on the context that we are in. Like Neo, we can discover that our thoughts are not everything that exists, and we do not have to base our actions on whatever pops into our heads. Instead, we can bend reality and live a more meaningful life by choosing to take action toward our values. Disordered thinking is eerily similar to the simulation in the Matrix. And if we're unaware of this programmed thinking, we simply don't see another way to experience life. This is all that there is. However, once we learn to see things as they are, we can slow things down and notice the thoughts, feelings, memories and sensations, and choose value-based actions despite what we see around us. We become psychologically flexible. As we conclude our series, remember that life's challenges are opportunities for growth. By embracing psychological flexibility, you become like Neo, able to see reality as it really is and take valued action. I've enjoyed creating this series, Key Concepts of ACT. As a new YouTube creator, I'm continuing to learn how to make videos and connect with my viewers. If you found these videos valuable, consider liking and subscribing.